Welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Listen in as we discuss all things business, growth and marketing with business owners, thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, founder of Roundhouse, the creative agency, Saul Edmonds.
Oh, hi everyone, and welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Greg Pritchard from BNI around the topic, making word of mouth marketing work for you. Greg, how are you on this fine morning?
Mate, great. It's a sunny day outside, even though we are, of course, both inside, but we can look up and appreciate what it could be if we weren't actually talking on this podcast.
It is a fine morning. It's actually quite fine outside. It's nice and warm, and it's a lovely day. And what better day to talk to you, Greg, about this fantastic topic?
Excellent. I'm just going to move to the edge of my seat.
Fantastic. So before we get into the topic, I suppose I'll just for people who don't know you, which may be many people listening to the podcast, could you just give everyone a bit of an overview of yourself? Give a snapshot about who you are, what you do, like in your outside of BNI involvement as well, and also what you do in BNI as well.
Excellent. Okay. So Greg Pritchard, my name, very long-term leader and expert in leadership behaviours. And in around about 2012, I discovered BNI because someone said to me when I was starting up a business for myself for the first time, you need to join BNI. I didn't understand that suggestion at the time, but I went along willingly and uncovered what it was. And BNI turned out to be a connection and the term Business Network International, a collection of local leaders, local business people doing business in a fairly geographical sort of location. Most people were 5 to 10 kilometres or so. Their business was from where we used to meet. And all it used to be about is business we were finding for each other, and what we're doing to tell other people about what an ideal referral might well be. It seemed ideal for me at the time.
Yeah, so is you, I guess also one of the other things, like I'm sort of say to everyone listening too, I've been a part of BNI now for quite a while too, like I think it's almost 10 years now. So we know a lot about BNI, but I guess there's many people that might be listening who don't actually know what BNI is. So could you just give everyone a slightly more in-depth overview of what the organisation is? I mean, touched on it just a little bit there, but just a little bit sort of more, if you would, Greg.
Well, let's go to your topic first, and then I'll step back out to BNI. The topic you asked me to address was making word of mouth marketing work for you. You think about what word of mouth marketing might well look like on the ground, and how someone might recommend you. Well, there's only two ways that I can think of. One is through friendship and blind loyalty to an individual. And the other is through actually experiencing something about that particular business, the services they offer, and the experience they can give someone who's been referred to them. And that's the place that BNI tries to adopt for itself. There are groups of people called chapters that populate various geographic locations across Brisbane, across the world, in fact. There are about 9,500 chapters across the world. And the focus of those chapters is to get to know each other really well in a business sense. So they can, in fact, recommend each other. So they can, in fact, say to their clients, here's a person that I know, that I trust, who does exactly the work that you're looking for, and I'll connect the two of you, and hopefully you can do business together. And it really is as simple as that. It's the knowledge of each other's business services and the trust that comes from the experience of those business services, creating referral business for people. Because if that relationship didn't exist through BNI, it either wouldn't exist at all, or you'd have to be relying on some other list of people who you know, who you may or may not have developed trust in to make those referrals, because we have different conversations with our clients sometimes. They're not about the services we provide, they're about who you know. and they can connect you with. It just happens organically all the time. This is a way of doing it in a structured way that helps everybody.
Yeah, and then I guess who you can obviously trust too, trust being like a big part of it, right?
Yeah, the trust is enormous. The thing that will happen sometimes in a friendship or like relationship or a distant business relationship where you lose track of that business over a period of time. Yeah. That doesn't happen with B&I because those businesses you're experiencing every week. You're talking to those people every week. You're offering up what your business does for their clients every week, and you're meeting with them to learn about their business every week.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. Like and this is probably, even me being doing it for a while, I think I only, I think most people obviously get the key principles of what it's all about and why it works and the things you were just saying then too. But one of the key things that I feel more and more over time is kind of even more one of the primary things is that idea of consistency, of having that engagement every week because of, partially because of what you said before too. Like if you're building trust or you have a relationship with clients or other people, you don't necessarily always, outside of some sort of structured arrangement of meeting up, you don't necessarily, engage with them every week or on a regular basis, really, do you? I mean, that's probably the norm, I think, in most instances, unless you're being really, proactive and always contacting people, which once again, most people aren't. That's kind of, in many ways for me anyway, like the one of the real strengths of many in BNI is having that arrangement where you're learning and you're understanding, plus, the obvious opportunities to receive leads from people who trust you. But that's always kind of, what would you say about, just a quick question just on that point, what would you say to people who experience BNI or who come across BNI but who find it hard or don't particularly like the idea of having to meet every single week? What would you say to them, like as a to sort of, not to convince people, but to say around what we've just been speaking about? What's the advantage of it?
Well, there's two specific things I would say. The first thing is BNI actually gives you an opportunity to do some work that you wouldn't do yourself. You wouldn't be able to do yourself. You wouldn't find enough referrals for yourself. So take it from another perspective. If you turned up for BNI every week and you are asking for referrals to the same types of businesses that you always got referrals to, well, what would be the point of that? You're always going to get referrals to those anyway. Where BNI has an advantage is that you can meet with people. You can talk about projects and ways that you could work together. You can talk about your ideal referrals. You can talk about your dream referrals. And you can take your business to the next level because some of your colleagues may be able to introduce you to people that you don't know. Example, I remember turning up at my chapter once and one of my colleagues gave me a referral to a business that I'd never heard of. I didn't know any of the leaders in that business. I didn't know the name of that business. I didn't know what they did. And so there was no way I was ever going to find that business myself because I wasn't looking for them. But because I gave an expression of what I was looking for earlier on, others thought, well, is this the type of business that Greg would like to be introduced to? Let's find out. And that's what they did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's always sort of something too when you, this is a no-brainer, obviously, for people who are in a BNI chapter or who've had experience, but for people, listening, when you're in a chapter meeting, like Greg was just saying, I guess you're educating people too about the sort of referrals you're looking for, but there is that very, sort of big element of then somebody listening to that, and then that, I guess, triggering something else, like another path of thought, which, like you just said, is going to lead to something that you're probably never likely to come across yourself, right? You're going to, it's just going to, it is, and it's not really even right to say it's kind of a chance element. I guess there kind of is a part of it is like that, but it's very strategic still, isn't it? Like that, the whole relationship is.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with my second point. You can go into business and fail. You can go into business in B&I and still fail. The key to it is, what are the relationships that you're going to develop, whether they're external to your business and external to B&I or in B&I, that will make your business work. It is a full participation activity, B&I. You get the best out of it if you're putting your best effort into it, trying to understand other people's businesses and find great referrals for them, so they will do the same thing for you. You can't survive in business without relationships. B&I is a way to structure, develop, build relationships you never dreamed of.
Well, yeah. I just from a personal point of view, I still, I guess when we first started our business in what we consider now in retrospect to be its sort of serious start, just also happened to, not coincidentally now in retrospect, be at the same time we joined BNI, because it put, outside of the things we've already been speaking about, it certainly put me in like a completely different mindset. Not at that point, not really even, having a clear idea of what business networking actually meant. I sort of generally knew, you're going to probably meet people and talk to them about things relating to business, but not really getting it until you're there. But interestingly, what resonated for me when I first, like in that very first meeting, I still remember it very clearly, outside of the, the warm welcome and everything, was how similar the general feeling and the formality of it was to being a part of a sports team. It felt very much like that to me. So for me, like having a interest in sports and different things relating, to martial arts and other things, it was really similar. And so for me, it was, and this may be the case with other people too, I don't know. But for me, that was certainly my experience. Was it was very familiar straight away. So it made my transition into something that I thought was going to be, I don't know what I thought it was going to be. I was a bit, I was like a bit ambivalent, but also a bit sort of suspicious about what it was going to mean. But then, of course, when I was in there, I was like, it's just a group of people helping each other out, basically, in a really structured way. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty good to me. So, and then 10 years down the track, I'm still here.
Yeah, and of course, you're not just helping out the colleagues around the table. You're helping out some of your customers too, because when they know you're connected to someone else who's also a great service provider for them, they're talking to you even more. They're trusting you even more because you know people who can help them as well as the service you provide.
Yeah, if you're going to there's the point, like our key topic, of course, being about word of mouth marketing and having it, work for you. I guess a part of that is going to be universally similar across different businesses. But where do you see? And feel free to give some examples of different types of businesses here too. But where do you see that idea of word of mouth marketing working in slightly different ways for different people that join BNI?
Well, qualify this with saying that effort, that relationship building is so important to where that might take you. But it happens in a number of ways. So it happens in a volume sense. There are plenty of people around in BNI who get 30, 40, 50, maybe even more % of their business from their BNI colleagues. So BNI grows businesses. BNI, in fact, grows itself. In the last 5 months of COVID, BNI has grown the number of members. It's grown the number of the closed business. So it's a unique and powerful relationship. It's a way of supporting each other, not only when times are good, but when times are tough as well, so that you can direct your business and direct your results in a particular way. It's a short-term response to something sometimes too. If you already know somebody that you like and trust, well, it's a quick decision to make a referral and a connection for your client to help them out of that process. It helps also in sheer peak referrals. Like I heard of a referral recently that topped $50 million over 3 years.
Wow.
I know of several others that have been way over $1 million, and I know lots of people who get a 6-figure referral income out of their BNI connections. They've got other business happening, but they've got 6 figures just coming out of BNI referrals. So that's a very strong relationship set. It's a very strong result that's difficult to walk away from. And staying there with those relationships, understanding what those dream referrals look like for your colleagues can make an awful, a massive difference to someone's business.
Yeah. In the, just a question, I guess, about the more broadly the world, the broader world of word of mouth sort of marketing, where BNI being, really I would say like one of the original and most prominent of those. But when people, an interesting topic that always seems to crop up at some point, when you're talking to either people around that topic or around BNI, is they'll say, well, I was part of BNI, but it didn't, work for me for certain reasons. And I joined this other group, and because of particular reasons. On that topic, what would you say is more unique and different about BNI? I don't like to specifically compare with other specific organizations, but it is kind of a key point for me too, because it does highlight certain things about why somebody would or wouldn't join a BNI chapter in the first place.
I think I'd simply answer that by saying, when a visitor comes to BNI, the feedback that's different after they walk out of BNI from walking out of other locations is they're impressed with the structure, the way in which everything is totally focused on business, and they're really impressed with the bit that happens at the end of the meeting when people are actually passing referrals to each other and talking about business they've closed and activities they're planning with each other. That's the thing that universally is different from almost every other organisation. They happen to an extent. They happen through luck. They happen through people clicking, but they don't happen through structure. They don't happen through expectation. And they don't happen as frequently in any other business organisation I know.
Yeah, I think the testament to that is probably just the longevity of the organisation also, right? It's been around for, because what's the current, it's more than 35 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, 35 years plus, and it's grown every year. How many recessions or economic downturns have we had over the last 35 years? Quite a few, and quite a few in different places, in different countries, but still we grow. Yeah,
it's actually one of the things that I still always find it, pretty amazing. And once again, this is one of those examples for me of the proof being in the pudding, is you never see, unlike of course, everywhere else you never see any advertising for BNI because it all is all by the same method through word of mouth marketing. You never see, ads for it anywhere. And I still come across people all the time when I say I've been a part of a BNI chapter for, X amount of years and this is why it's great and so forth. And people are like, what's BNI? And then you forget that unlike other things, like they're not out there on many of those traditional channels advertising in the same way. Like they're out there, of course. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of education. There's a lot of content out there, but it's not advertised in the same way.
No, it's true. It's a great undiscovered business secret, BNI. And it's a pleasure to see people discover it from time to time when they're actually brought along.
That's true, yeah.
Their face lights up. They can't believe what they're seeing.
I know, yeah. Yeah, it is. That's actually just, that was, even though when I was very new to business, like so many years ago, that was my experience because I remember specifically when we were, thinking about new ways to get business and my wife had done research on business related things and had come across, and it was at sort of Wellington Point at the time. She said, there's this organization and this is what it's about. And I, offhandedly dismissed it as kind of not wanting to do it. I was like, I don't want to do that. And I'm not knowing why, of course, like thinking back, it's like, there's so funny me thinking that. But then of course, as soon as you go there, but that's I'll just get you to share your thoughts then too, I guess, on the importance of the actual experience, because of course, me being then going, no, I don't like the idea of that. I don't want to go and, talk to a bunch of people about this. I should be at home doing work. And then of course going there. And like you said, like it's just this sort of incredible secret that somehow, of course it's not a secret, it's been around forever. But then going, how did I not know about this? And I was forced to come here, but wow, I'm really happy that I was forced kind of to go there.
Well, being successful in BNI means you change your behaviour. You're reminded every week of some of the things you should be doing. And may I say, I haven't seen any recent data, but whenever I had a look at data in the past, the top 3 reasons for people joining BNI, number 3 was usually getting the business. Everyone loved getting the business, but the number 2 the other 2 were actually the business development that comes your way from the interactions you have with other people, the way you learn to present, the way you learn to engage with other individuals. And then the other thing is just pure business knowledge. If you're in a particular business, you've probably got some regular contact with a pretty small number of people, and plenty of other contacts in a rarer sense with others. Sitting in a room with a bunch of professionals every week hearing about the challenges that they're going through and the advice they're giving to their clients. Every week seeing someone present in detail about their business. There's an enormous amount of things that I've learned from BNI. In fact, a perfect example is so much have I learned in the last 5 months during the COVID experience, because I know what's happening for lots of different businesses. I'm hearing that. If I was reading the press or dreaming or some other sort of method of trying to find out what's going on, I'd have no idea of some of the things that I now know just because I'm interacting with business people all the time.
Oh, totally. The perspective that you're 100% right. The perspective that it gives you, I think is really unsurpassed, because I've never been able to think of really another scenario in business life or just in almost general life where you get such a broad, interesting, informative, and also trustworthy perspective. It's not just from a group of strangers. It's in that sort of team environment, and of course for many people, like, it becomes it's a place also, I mean, me included, like, where you find friendship too. You make new friends, and that's probably like a natural part of that. For many people anyway. What do you? Well, actually, I'll just get you to also share your thoughts too, just on that idea of that exposure to people and business learning, of one of the key sort of tenets of BNI being lifelong learning. Greg, could you share your thoughts about that?
Well, there are a number of levels in it within BNI. So I'll come back to the in-room experience, but we have something called BNI University, which has an enormous amount of information available to us. And for example, in the last few months, while the COVID experience has been shared by all of us, there's been a business builder series that BNI has promoted. Now, I'm not sure if I'm even up to date with the number of podcasts that are there. There are about 34 last time I looked, of top flight speakers, international speakers who are actually been running businesses. And one of the ones that sticks in my mind that I did listen to was from Action Coach. Now, what's his name? Brad Sugars. Now, his advice for how we needed to approach and plan in the early days of COVID, just first class advice. Many others that I've looked at in that way. So there's that we teach each other how to support each other. There are lots of training courses that are about being better at BNI interactions and some of the leadership roles. You actually get leadership experience through BNI, and get leadership training through BNI as part of that process too. And then the in-room experiences and the experiences when you get together. We always need to listen to accountants, legal experts, financial planners, media experts, and many other insurance experts, but we don't listen to them enough. But we can listen to them every week in BNI about what's happening, what's changing, what's important. It's amazing the number of things that we hear, which we either hear for the first time, or we hear them and we know we should be doing them, but we're not. So it's a great reminder of how you need to change your behaviour to be at your best in business.
Yeah, it's like having your finger on not only one pulse, but on like a range of different sort of pulses across a range of industries. I've always found you get these sort of insights, because you're right. I mean, like I'm sure many people feel the same. The same, like in business, is often can be quite isolating. So the thing I've certainly, one, apart from like many reasons of sort of remaining in BNI, one of the key things that I always really like is just this. There's a very simple thing. It's the general idea that I always feel more comforted generally going to, even when I'm tired in the morning, I always know I'm going to have this general feeling of feeling like I'm not alone, in that there's other people who are going through similar things. There might be completely different industries, but, that's not, it wasn't one of the reasons why I joined BNI, but it's certainly become one of those things. Obviously people that you like and trust too. It's nice to be around them, every single week. But also just that feeling like you're part of something a bit bigger that is, and on like that, I guess, as a segue to, I'll just get your thoughts just to talk to people a little bit about the give is gain philosophy of BNI too, if you wouldn't mind, Greg.
Sure. Look, it's a fairly simple concept. If you're out there working for others and you're giving to them in their particular business, then they'll feel somewhat obliged to do the same for you. It's a almost like a quid pro quo, which used to seem like a good thing until the American politicians started talking about quid pro quo. But it's very reciprocal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's that's a human thing, isn't it? It's not just a BNI thing. Yeah. It's a great, like they've been able to give it like a good term too, but it's one of those universal things. If you're, helping other people out first, if you want to call it then karma or whatever term you want to put on it, it's the same deal, isn't it? Like it's going to come back at some point, but I think a key part of that is then not necessarily having the expectation that that's going to happen. Like it's going to happen at some point, and the focus being on the fact that you're helping other people out. It's a good thing.
So I work with a lot of large and medium-sized organisations, and you can't succeed in any of those organisations without building relationships with others. The same is true if you're working by yourself or just in a very small team. You cannot succeed without relationships with others. And whether they're like occasional referral relationships, or whether they're just trying to help your other client out in some other particular way, or whether you're doing it through BNI, you're a better person as in business when you know that you've got relationships that you can rely on.
Yeah. I think that the increased skill set in whether it's learning how to speak publicly well, or just general relationships, like is I think a really sort of underrated thing sort of sometimes, because the benefits are so huge. Like they and you don't always realize them necessarily until like some years down the track, but it's a really important part, I find. What do you think? Like, there's I think it was, I can't remember the exact quote by, BNI's founder, Ivan Meisner, about farming and hunting too. But I just want to share your thoughts, like I guess in BNI and in business, about that particular idea that being in BNI, and I suppose to some extent in business too, should be more about farming sort of rather than hunting.
Look, absolutely. I don't think it matters what perspective you come from, whether you come from a person in business, a person in BNI, a person utilising LinkedIn, a person utilising other aspects of social media. You can't sell in your second sentence. You actually need to build a relationship first. Yeah. It's the relationships that matter. It's the trust and knowledge about your referral services and your standards that actually really matter. And so, yes, we're not hunters. We are farmers. We're relationship builders. And you can get lucky and get in for a couple of quick kills here and there in whatever aspect that you do. But that's not how you build a long-term business. It's not how you build a long-term membership. And it's not how you build long-term results.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you could come at it from the point of view of like, nobody likes to be hunted either, do they?
No.
Who likes to be hunted? I don't. Well, unless it's, of course, somebody who you like a lot. I don't know, but as a general idea though, it's not a, that things that are being nurtured and can grow, will grow sort of strongly and well over time. And that's the case with anything, especially relationships. I mean, that's just not even a business thing. That's also one of those other life things too. It's all about relationships. Like you could go so far as to say that, really, I think.
Well, I think also those people who are trained hunters or believe they're great hunters, they've only been trained for a small percentage of the population. So there's this aspect about timing, that magic cycle. You just happen to hit somebody up at the time that they're really looking for something. But also and the population that are people who are just meet my criteria and I'll sign on the dotted line, they're only 20-25% of the population at best. Everyone else expects that nurturing relationship. something that actually tells you something about the person and the level of trust, and gives you the certainty of the decision making because you've done your investigations. Even a person who actually really, really, really needs something right now, who's not one of those instant criteria-based decision makers, they're going to take their time. They're going to make sure that it's good for them and good for those around them. They can explain it well to various other people. I don't feel pressured. I don't feel like that they're being pushed in a time frame that doesn't actually match them. So yeah, hunters, you're in a smaller area. It's like hunting in Africa at the moment. There's less animals, and I can tell you the same thing as in the rest of the marketplace. Those people that go directly out there and for a kill straight up, you're shooting for a smaller market. You need to build and nurture and make relationships and make them work for both of you.
Yeah, supply and demand, right? Yeah, and yeah, I guess the thing is too, which is interesting from a digital, even from like a digital marketing point of view, is that people often have, you hear different arguments about what works and what doesn't work from a digital or like email marketing like point of view. And there's a lot of evidence, like even in that kind of sphere, that I guess a digital simulation of what we've just been talking about actually works better, because ultimately, what we were just saying, still even in that sphere works well. If it's either like a long form piece of content that is, talking to people, in such a way to inform them well about what they might, need to know. And still ultimately it's all about building trust. I mean, that's like a digital simulation of it. And that's even the case with how all search engines actually work. Like it's purely a digital simulation, or sort of trying to simulate real world, trust building. There's I think there's an element of SEO, like search engine optimization, which is relates to how well you rank, which is actually called trust flow. Like, so it's trying to simulate at all parts of the experience still what they know still works. There's about a building of trust. I mean, sometimes they try to obviously accelerate that, try to like speed up the trust flow sort of process, but it's the same deal. So a part of what just on a more personal note with you, Greg, like when your role in BNI as a director consultant, that's the right terminology now, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, director consultant.
If that one still works, yeah.
Yeah. Whew. So what do you actually do within, say, a chapter? For people listening, why do BNI chapters have a director consultant? Like, what's the purpose of having someone like yourself there?
Well, one of the key factors is just simply support, and someone there to help the group as a sounding board go through whatever their challenges are as a group. We always like to make sure that people who are members are contributing members, and so sometimes there are decisions around that, membership renewals and the like, that require a bit of support from the support director. Information. I'm going to a chapter tomorrow, and I'll be doing a 10-minute presentation tomorrow about things that will help them focus on getting more visitors in the room and making some more referrals. And I also help with training arrangements. And so in this year's training cycle, I think it's the treasurers and secretary treasurers who I'll be training for the national training that comes up reasonably next month, in fact. So it can happen a number of different ways, but regular phone contact, regular visit contact, and helping for the challenges that move the chapters forward. when they're ready to work on the next thing and want to sound out somebody who actually might have been through it before, I'm the person who tries to help.
Yeah. Is it correct to say, like, I've always viewed your role within a chapter to have, like, it's got a certain coaching aspect to it, but it's also like it's not quite that. Would you say that there's a part of that is true? Like, say in the traditional sense, like when I think of, say, a coach, if you're thinking about a sporting team, a coach there is a part of that is strategy, but there's often, like you were saying, there's support, I guess, to facilitate people being able to be their best kind of selves, which there are anyway, but sometimes having another third party there to, help with that process, or just to guide where required, not to, tell people what to do, but to help. Would you say that's a way that you look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a very small number of things that you might say I'm somehow involved in the approval process. But mostly it's coaching and supporting the team to do the job they want to do for themselves and their members. And I think if I'm looking after 3 chapter groups and you don't see them with my imprint of what the chapter needs, you see them with my support for what their own imprint is, to make sure that we stay within the B&I structures and guidelines and things that we know that work. It's one thing you learn from B&I over sort of 35 years, and with members giving suggestions, you learn what works, and you want to keep people on track with what actually works. And yes, coaching people in that direction very much is what the job's about.
Yeah. I think that's an important point in relation to B&I, and you do hear the opposite point of view from people who find out that B&I probably isn't for them, is that idea of, sticking to the systems and things that are put in place. And I think that's like quite an important point, because, like, the fact is that whether anyone thinks sort of otherwise or not, like, every chapter obviously has its own personality too, and its own group of people, but those systems that have been put in place and have obviously evolved over time, they work for a reason, right? It's because, like, they've, it's not because, it's just happened, like, and they obviously have evolved a fair bit over time too. They've changed a fair bit, haven't they?
Absolutely. And one thing that B&I as an international organisation now, one way it's different from the way it would have been, say, 5 years ago, is that better IT means better data. And, and we can actually learn from who are the best people in the world doing a particular function. So you mightn't be learning totally locally. You might actually have some important processes that really help. So, for example, the leadership team, or the chapter success program, as they called it, that was learned out of what's happening in Germany, because Germany was getting, at the time that this was introduced, the best results. So people said, well, okay, what is it that Germany's doing that's somewhat different?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that became part of
the education process
about why things happen.
Yeah. That's right, isn't it? It's like there's a certain sort of crowdsourcing aspect to that too, and you've got like a really large group of people. There's like an element of having a certain amount of data, and there's going to be a lot of things that are common across regions worldwide that you'll probably see repeated too, which I guess in its own way is important, because it can affirm things you've already thought work well, and you see it repeated and you go, well, that makes it even more relevant. But like that point too, their environment may have been, like, their business environment is like a little bit different for whatever reason. Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because I hadn't really considered that, but that's an obvious one with such a big organization. And like you said, the systems that they've got in place now online for managing data and information gives people a lot of very clear insights, really, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If something's happening, it's happening in one place better than anywhere else in the world, you've got the opportunity to ask, well, why is that?
Yeah, there's always a reason. Yeah, it's never, I mean, there may be chance elements that influence things, but generally there's always a very specific reason why. And then that's exactly the reason why, interestingly, when you do digital marketing, one of the strengths of that is being able to analyze. Is obviously the doing of it is important. That's key. But the analysis of it gives business insights too, not just like marketing insights. It gives insights into how things are run, and that's it's exactly the same thing. But as we I guess as we get towards the end of the podcast, Greg, I'll just ask you at this point, if you wouldn't mind, if you'd be so kind to give us a relevant quote, a quote that you like, that you feel is really relevant and you'd like to share with everyone.
Well, I'll just go to the one I picked out since you mentioned this one. It's one of Ivan Meisner's, and it's a long one, so I'll read it slowly. First, you have to be visible in the community. You have to get out there and connect with people. It's not called net sitting. It's not called net eating. It's called networking. You have to work at it.
Yeah.
Dr. Ivan Meisner.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a beauty. I like that one. So as we're wrapping up now, once again, thanks so much for coming on, Greg. It's been really great. And would you be able to share with everyone the best way, I guess, for people to get either in touch with you or BNI in general, if someone's listening and they want to explore things a bit more or just generally learn more, where would they go and how do they get in contact?
All right, for me, pretty easy. LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me. I'm Greg Pritchard 1 on LinkedIn, so pretty easy to find me.
The one and only.
There are many more, but they were slower than me, I think, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I got the Greg Pritchard 1. For BNI, just BNI.com. It doesn't seem like very much, but BNI.com will get you to a website and you can start making geographical inquiries from that point on. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So with that in mind, that's actually it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening into our podcast. Before we go, please leave your feedback as well as any suggestions for topics you would like us to discuss in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Grow Your Business podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Grow Your Business. Have a great day.